I'm Mike. I'm a federal judge, 15 years on the bench. But I wasn't sitting that day. That day, I was a father, an enraged, terrified father. That's a day I will never forget, bursting into my 12-year-old daughter Sophia's room and finding her crying in her wheelchair. She was born with a disease that prevents her from eating as a typical child. She survives on a feeding tube. Standing in our home, uninvited, was a blonde woman with a pinched face. She had 2 large men in tow. They were loading my daughter's medical supplies into trash bags. "Stop! Those are my daughter's feeding tubes!" I screamed. My wife, Anna, was already there, yelling and trying to grab the bags from the men. The woman raised a sheet of paper, like it gave her the right to do what she was doing. "I'm Mrs. Winters, president of the HOA," she said coldly. "Your medical equipment violates our community standards. Nothing unsightly should be visible from the outside. It brings down property values." "My daughter will die without those tubes," I yelled, my hands shaking. "That's not my problem. You signed the HOA contract when you moved in," she snarled. Sophia cried, "Daddy, I'm scared. How will I eat?" I was barely coping. "Those supplies cost thousands. Insurance won't pay for them for a month." "You should have considered that before bending the rules," Winters sneered. Then she looked at her watch. "We're done here." They cleaned out the cabinet. Everything, all of it gone. "This is illegal," I growled, voice trembling. "You'll regret this." Mrs. Winters smiled. "Good luck. We have great lawyers." She had no clue what she was messing with. As soon as they'd departed, Sophia looked up at me, ghostly white and frightened. "Dad, I'm starving. When can I eat?" I wrapped my arms around her as Anna called the doctor, her voice trembling with fear. Our son Jake, 14, stood frozen in the doorway. "They can take her belongings?" he asked, shocked. "No, Jake," I said, fire rising in my gut. What they did was more than wrong. It was criminal. And I'm going to make them pay. We'd moved to Oakwood Estates for the schools. Single story, wide doorways, space for her wheelchair. We felt safe at last. But from the beginning, Mrs. Winters made our life miserable. She griped about the special van that transported Sophia to school, the ramp we built, how tall our lawn was, even when we were away at the hospital. Anna and I alternated sitting with Sophia that night. The doctor informed her she could go without her tube for a few hours. No more. We paid $3,000 cash out of pocket for emergency hospital equipment the next morning. Then I got a text. A number I didn't know sent a photo of Sophia's feeding tubes, thrown away in a dumpster, with the following message: "Violation removed. Neighborhood values protected." That was that. No more Mr. Nice Guy. I drove straight to the HOA office. The receptionist tried to stall me. "Have Mrs. Winters call for my daughter's medical equipment," I said matter-of-factly. Something in my voice made her wince. She called Winters immediately. She came out smiling smugly. "Judge Ramirez," she said with strained civility. "You're angry, but our rules are written down. Section 7.3? Her feeding tube was in our home," I explained to her, my voice even but unforgiving. "Not out on the sidewalk." "We've had complaints about delivery vehicles," she said, gesturing with one hand. "We have the right to enter and to enforce infractions." "You didn't provide us with notice," I said. Those were not notices. They were harassment. She shrugged. "Maybe your family needs a different community. Oakwood has standards." I stared at her, amazed at the cruelty. "Where are my daughter's supplies?" "Disposed of," she answered. "Biohazard materials are not allowed on HOA property." "They weren't used," I explained. "They were clean, sealed, and worth thousands." She looked at her watch again. "If you'll excuse me, I have a meeting about unapproved lawn decorations." I stepped in closer. "You know what I do for a living?" "Sure, having a federal judge live nearby is rather prestigious." "Then you see I know the law. All right then." Her smile fell. "So do our lawyers." "Fine, tell them I'll call them." After I got back to my own nation, I found Sophia white and exhausted. "Did you have my tubes put back?" she whispered. "Yet," I said, bending over her. "But I will, I promise." That night, after Sophia slept, I got on with it. First, I requested an emergency court order, citing the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Fair Housing Act, and state child protection laws. Second, I called the county prosecutor, an old friend, to file criminal charges: theft, unlawful entry, endangering a child. Third, I wrote to every resident in the neighborhood, letting them know what Mrs. Winters had done, and including the HOA bylaws, which were mum regarding medical supplies. By morning, my phone was ringing nonstop. Neighbors also had stories: an elderly man forced to remove his wheelchair ramp, a veteran yelled at for having a flag flown, a family ticketed for having sensory toys in their front yard for their autistic child. The local news played it up. HOA seizes disabled girls' medical gear. Public outrage was immediate. 3 days later, I was standing in a courtroom, not as a judge, but as a father. My co-judge, Judge Sarah, sat behind the bench, glaring at Mrs. Winters. "You took life-saving medical equipment from a child," she said. "Return everything immediately and pay for full replacement cost." "I was just following rules," Winters stammered. "Your rules do not take precedence over a child's right to live," Sarah asserted. "You are also being charged with a crime." Mrs. Winters began to cry. Now she knew how Sophia felt. When we returned home, something amazing had happened. There were neighbors in our backyard, all holding signs: "We support Sophia." Medical needs are not violations. Community means everyone. Mrs. Chin, the lawyer who lived on the street behind our house, hugged me. "Mike," she said, "we've put out a special notice. We're voting off the entire board, and we're rewriting all the rules." That night, Sophia ate dinner with her feeding tube attached. Cards, teddy bears, and presents cluttered her room. "Dad," she smiled, "Jenny across the street has a feeding tube as well. Her mom is visiting tomorrow to show us really neat backpacks that cover them." I finally breathed for the first time in days. The next morning, a moving truck pulled up to Mrs. Winters' home. Sunglasses on, head down, she quietly left. The other board members resigned the same day. She quickly pleaded guilty to endangering a child and theft. The judge, a mother herself, sentenced her to probation, community service at a children's hospital, and disability rights education. But our greatest victory wasn't in court. 6 months later, Sophia cut the ribbon on an accessible neighborhood playground. Her feeding tube visible beneath her shirt, she grinned with pride. "Dad," she asked that night, "did you think Mrs. Winters learned something?" I thought of her in court, small, scared, finally understanding. "I do hope so, sweetheart. Because you always tell me justice isn't about punishing people, it's fixing things." I grinned. "You'd be a better judge than I would." "Maybe someday," she grinned. "But first, I want to be a doctor that works with kids like me." We planted a garden in the front yard that summer, something the old HOA would never have allowed. Sophia led us from her wheelchair, laughing. In the middle, we erected a sign: "Growing kindness, understanding, and acceptance." And in her bedroom window, where it could be viewed from the street, a glass sun catcher hung, in the form of a feeding tube. It cast rainbows across our lawn. It wasn't a defiant gesture. It was a gesture of hope. Because the things that make us different can be the very things that bring us together. And sometimes real justice doesn't come from a gavel. It comes from the courage of a little girl who wouldn't be ashamed.